sir.
Yes,
How are you, boss? Good evening.
Good, man.
Good. Thank you for having me.
How have you been?
I've been alright, busy as
Good,
usual.
good,
Yeah,
good.
you know, work.
Thank you for accepting the invite to participate in our podcast. The idea is to educate
Yes.
while we entertain,
Yes.
simplify law,
Yes.
make it accessible to ordinary folk,
Yes.
young and old,
Yes. Yes.
which is where you come in.
The young or the old.
Yes, well, somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
This is by no means a substitute for legal advice.
That's true.
We always encourage viewers out there to consult lawyers for proper legal advice. But having said that, tell me about yourself. What do you do? What station you at in society now for the benefit of our viewers?
Alright, so Sbusiso Nxumalo. I'm an airline pilot. I fly for South African Airways on national carrier as a first officer. So I operate on the 320 Airbus A320s and soon to be converting into the A330s. So doing a lot of regional and domestic flying at the moment. And as you can see, I'm just landed late last night from the Cape Town. I did 3 legs from Cape Town back, Cape Town, and then back again.
In one day?
In one day, 3 times. Yes.
Yeah, it's quite hectic.
Yeah, so Friday I did similar, and then yesterday I did the same until last night.
Okay, but you're resting today?
I'm resting today. Today is my day off. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's
off.
good. And home front?
Home front. I grew up in Soweto. One of 3 kids. I'm the middle child. The problem one. Primary school I studied in Soweto as well. High school in Soweto, and then I got a scholarship to go fly in Waterkloof in Pretoria. Post-matric, I did my ground training for pilot flying. I was one of the few young commercial pilot license holders in the country. I had to wait until my 18th birthday to do my com test.
Really?
Yeah. I had to wait. I had done all the training, but you cannot test before your 18th birthday.
And all the exams done?
Everything was done. Then I've started my flying career at Solent Aviation, flying contracts all over the world.
And how old are you now, if you don't mind?
36.
36. And Sbu, the topic for today
is
marriage contracts, different types of marriages, customary. We hope to be covering different, relationships. But what I found interesting about you was, I remember a couple of months ago, you walked in here with your wife to be then, and you said to me, Dad, I want to get married and I need a marriage contract. You were all hyped up. You thought you knew what we were talking about. And I said, no, I can't talk to you alone.
Yes.
You need to bring the missus.
Exactly.
And just take us from there. What made you at that young age to think about a marriage contract when traditionally, especially young people don't even think about this? They're excited, your blood is pumping.
So the experience basically is we sat down, myself, and later on in the stage we discussed this, me and my wife. Initially it was because as young guys, look, we fall into the trap of if I didn't say it, as you mentioned, fall into a lot of traps of getting engaged, getting married, getting done all the traditional ceremonies, white wedding, then it's done. The repercussions further become a problem when even guys my age have now gone into divorces. So when you hear the stories about how the divorce is going on and what kind of contract marital contract they got into, becomes very tricky. So for me, someone who decided to get married at 36, which is pretty late in life, I already had established myself. And I've already had assets, I already bought houses, and I've got a lot of assets, and I've got shares and all of that. So in order for me to protect that going forward, and I remember coming to you, my discussion was, I want to protect those assets in case something happens between the two of us and I become unemployed. That they shouldn't go after her, let them go after me. Then we came with a contract, and we said, we know what the contract we want. We want this A and C with accrual. And you said, no. That's not how it's going to work. Please take me through how you actually decided on now breaking it down into a way that with accrual and non-accrual, how that works for our agreement.
Maybe the best way of explaining that is to go back to the basics. What is a marriage? A marriage is a contractual relationship between 2 consenting adults. Male to male, male to female, female to female, because that is what our current legal position is now. Now, when you get married, you are entering into a relationship that binds you for life or until you decide to divorce, so to terminate. Many years ago, especially black people, didn't have an option to decide which marital regime to enter into. It was automatic in community of property.
Yes.
What that means is that husband comes to the marriage with whatever he has, inheritances, debts. Wifey comes with whatever she also has. Now, when you get married in community of property, it means what belongs to you is called an estate. What belongs to her is called an estate. Now you now have what is called a joint estate. Many, many years ago then, women did not have the full contractual capacity as men, where the woman needed the husband's permission to conclude contracts.
Yes.
But that's all in the past. So you are now equal partners. The sad part with a marriage in community of property is that her debts are your debts are her debts. So a marriage in community of property starts affecting you the minute you get married.
Yeah.
So I know how people will say, when they're trying to avoid having a hard conversation, blah blah blah, and you avoid that discussion.
Yeah.
But the truth is, if you have a setup where you have a joint estate, if you are not credit worthy and your partner is credit worthy, and you both want to apply for a joint bond, for example, to buy a house, her poor credit rating is going to affect you, even though you're good for the money, and vice versa. So it starts affecting you now when you're starting out, not only when you divorce or in the event of a death. And that is one of the biggest disadvantages. But we're scared because society will judge us badly. To have hard conversations, to say, you know what, I don't want my mess up to affect you, and vice versa. And we're living in a society where young girls are entrepreneurs in their own right. They are amassing great wealth. You got married having been working for some time, and you accumulated considerable assets. So ideally, now that you have a choice, you should opt not to get married in community of property because you have a choice. But then it means you have to have a hard conversation with your partner and be civil about it, be mature about it, to say, sweetheart, we need to talk so that we protect each other. Not from a negative point of view where you are suspicious of each other, but to secure your interest in the best possible manner. So what is the alternative to marriages in community of property? It's marriages out. But here's a trick. You've got to conclude a contract that regulates the type of marital regime that is best suitable for you. Secondly, that marital contract must be concluded in front of a notary, which is a lawyer who's a specialist, which is me. That's why you ended up coming to me. Now, if you hadn't done that and you had decided to go to Home Affairs or to your mfundisi to get married, he was going to ask you, how are you getting married? If you say out of community of property, he was going to say, where is your contract?
That's it.
So, because it is called an antenuptial contract, it is a contract that you conclude with me before you go sign. So, ante is a Latin word for before. Nuptial is a Latin word for marriage. C is contract. Contract is a contract. There are different types of antenuptial contracts. They are not standard. But how you do it, which brings me closer to your question, is you've got to understand what it is that the parties are trying to achieve, what it is that they're trying to protect. And then you spec it in accordance with their fears, their needs, and their concerns. So it's not a one size fits all. In your case, you came here thinking that you are wanting to conclude a contract with accrual. And it was clear to me that you had no flipping idea what you were talking about. Because you probably took it from Kolokshin and guys talking, and you thought, you know. And having listened to you and having considered what your concerns were, we went through a whole exercise where I workshopped the both of you.
Beautiful lecture. That was incredible.
And then we ended up with a contract different to what you had in mind. But the bottom line is, there are different types. So the one with accrual simply means we have to measure what you are coming into the marriage with. Because to accrue means up or down, some form of growth. So you've got to measure it. It means we have to have a balance sheet of sorts to say, this is what Sbu's estate is worth upon commencement of this relationship. This is what Madame's worth is. Then you record those commencement values. So that in the unfortunate event that you decide you want to get divorced, we then have to measure your estate at that time.
Yes.
So 5 years later, if you had started out at 10,
Yep.
and 5 years later you are now sitting at 20, it means your estate has accrued by 10. If Madame started out at 10, 5 years later she's sitting at 40, it means her estate has accrued by 30.
Yeah.
And then you subtract the small accrual
From the bigger accrual, and then it has to be divided. I remember that
exactly.
one. Yeah.
Now that still has a semblance of community of property, because you could even drop. You might have started at 10.
Correct. That's the positive side, yeah.
And then you squander it with
to
your
minus 20.
good for nothing friends. You're at minus 20.
Yeah.
And poor wife, she's working, being responsible. She accumulates more.
Yes.
Obviously, your accrual will be lower than hers.
Yes.
So hers is going to have to somehow cross-subsidize. Now, that is basically how it works.
Yes.
Now, that's not what many people know. They think, I'll protect what I have, she protects what she has, we'll only share what we accumulate together. No, it doesn't work that way.
That was my mistake. That was our mistake, actually. When we walked in, we explained that's what we think. You said, no, you don't understand the legal implications of it.
All right.
Then you took us to the next step.
The next option was a straight marriage without accrual.
Yes.
So what's yours is yours, what's hers is hers. Yes. But that does not mean you cannot coexist, you cannot share. Yes. It simply means her estate runs separately and independently from your estate.
That's correct.
It's a safer one.
Yes.
I find that is probably the best route for many young couples. Or even older couples.
Yes.
Because then you've got financial freedom, financial independence. But it does not mean you can't acquire assets together.
That's it.
You can still buy a house together. That has nothing to do with the fact that you're married. You could be business partners for all I care. But as couples, you would obviously have concerns about how do we secure each other. You may then consider buying assets together. You may also consider having a joint will.
That's what we have.
Which then gives her comfort, it also gives you comfort. And you can decide
Yes.
how you want to deal with your respective estates
Yes.
in the event of death.
That's it.
In the event of my death, my entire estate goes to my wife.
Yeah.
If you are lucky enough to be blessed with children, you can say half of my estate goes to my wife, half of my other estate is going to be shared equally amongst my children,
Yes.
at the time. I'm quite happy and impressed with you that you chose to take proper legal advice, and get into a contract that was customized to suit your needs.
Yeah.
You know, you youngsters, you like fat and sets. It's easy.
It's easy, it's convenient. Why do I need to go visit the parents? Yeah.
What happens in the event your wife is not working, so her credit score is probably, nowhere near yours, but she was taking care of the kids, making the house a home.
And you want to get married?
Yeah.
Marriage has got nothing to do with your balance sheet. The balance sheet only gets into the equation when you decide the type of contract you want.
So let's say we've been married for 20 years and now we want to get a divorce. Financially, you're in a better position than I am. But that's not to say I wasn't contributing to this marriage or to this household.
Before I answer that, I need to know what type of marriage
was it?
What type of contract did you have?
What if you just lobola me and then yafela mutam?
I will assume that they had married in community of property.
Okay.
But the husband was working, the wife was looking after the home. In the event of a marriage in community of property,
Yes.
she is entitled to 50%
of his estate. Yeah.
of the
Of the
estate.
estate, the entire estate.
Of the
because
entire
now it's
estate
joint estate.
at the time of the divorce.
Yeah.
You are not, as a stay-home mom, necessarily disadvantaged because you didn't contribute financially.
That's true.
The skills that you contributed. In fact, I had a female judge who lashed at a guy who, upon divorce, was saying, but she was sitting at home, she never brought money, blah. And then she asked, do you know how much a nanny costs?
Yes.
Do you know how much a cook would have cost? Was she washing for you? Yes. Did she have sex with you? Do you know how much a mahosha costs? And everybody just scanned them. The bottom line is those were services in kind
Yes.
that couldn't be monetized
Yes.
with precision.
That's it.
But the point is, she did contribute to the development of the estate, to the growth
That's
of the
it.
estate.
That's it.
So because they were married in community of property, she'll be entitled to 50% of the pension fund,
That's it.
50% of the shares, 50% of everything.
She probably had a lot more work to do than the husband.
Of
'Cause,
course.
I mean, running the home and looking after the kids. It's no
I mean, if you're
joke.
flying around, who's looking after the
Exactly.
kids?
I'm gone
Who's
and my wife is
cooking,
at
who's-
home. Who's cooking, taking care of the kids, taking them to
Exactly.
school, coming back, doing homework. I'm gone for 5, 6, 7 days.
The other flip side is if at the time you got married, you chose a particular contract. Unfortunately, upon divorce, your marital regime and the consequences thereof
Yes.
will be informed by the type of contract, which is
Exactly.
why it is important to understand what it is that you're getting yourself into. Because if, for example, you got into a situation where it was without accrual,
Yes.
your estate is your estate, my estate is my estate. Upon divorce, you're not going to be sitting pretty because the courts will say you got into this contract with your eyes open. There are instances where you can apply for what is called a redistribution to say
Okay.
on the basis of this and that.
I was
and
about
these
to ask
factors,
about that.
You know,
So
but that's an
then-
exception rather than the rule.
Oh, rule,
The
okay.
rule is you get into a contract with your eyes open. You had a choice
Yes.
to decide how to structure
Yes.
the consequences of your marital
Yes.
regime.
All right.
You raise something also about sometimes people just pay lobola and
Yeah.
it ends there.
Yes.
You know, until recently, customary marriages were not recognized or
Yeah.
didn't have a legal effect. But now the position has changed. And all you need really is to be above the age of 18.
Oh.
And depending on the different cultures and traditions, lobola alone is not necessarily the determinant of the conclusion of a customary marriage.
Yes.
And I've had clients, females, who after their partner has passed, would come and say, hey, the family of the guy that I've been living with for so many years, that has lobolat me,
Yes.
even though we never had a traditional white wedding, now don't regard me as a makoti.
Can I add something on this?
Yeah.
You just mentioned the line. I've lived with the guy for so many years.
Yes.
There is this whole thing that's been going around that people believe that once you've been with someone and you've lived in them for, is it 10 years? For more than 10 years, that you are entitled. It becomes as if you guys are married. So that's a fight and said situation.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's a fact and
For
say
10 years.
it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So is there a period of how long it should
No,
be?
it doesn't
Okay.
matter.
All right.
You may have stayed for 10 years in a
Yes.
fat and set arrangement.
Yes. With no lobola.
If there's no lobola, no semblance of compliance with some of the traditional and customary beliefs,
Yes.
that's it. It's exactly that, the fat and
Fight
set.
and said,
If you are with a person for 10 years, for goodness sake,
marry the person.
marry the person either in terms of civil rights or in terms of customary, because the law is now flexible.
Yeah.
And it does not mean if you haven't even registered that customary marriage, it is null and void.
Yes.
No, it can still be given full legal effect,
Yes.
provided you can demonstrate that you have complied with the basic cultural or traditional customs, which is why it's called a customary marriage.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So for two, okay, let's say in the case where there's some people who do not believe in the institution of marriage, but they want to become life partners. So two people, unmarried, can they have a joint will?
Yes, I mean,
Because you did say it's like a business transaction.
yeah, they will simply be what is called universal partners.
Okay.
They are partners for life.
Yes.
They can regulate their arrangements in a manner that suits them.
Yes.
If it's a contract, it's binding upon the two willing and contracting parties.
Okay.
You know, you can draft your own will and say, in the event of my death, everything that belongs to me goes to my partner,
Yes.
to whom I'm not even married.
Exactly.
But
Okay.
it's my will. I am dealing with my estate.
Yes.
I can leave it to whoever
Yes.
I so wish. Constitutionally, we even recognize interracial marriages,
Yes.
marriages of same-sex people.
Yes.
These are things that in the olden days they were not allowed.
Yeah,
You
that's
couldn't even date a white woman, bro.
Yeah.
In my days, yeah. Now you guys are even kissing misses. Yeah. Nowadays you'll be in trouble, man. You'll be in trouble.
Be chased and can actually be hunted down to be found in your home.
Yeah, but the point is, whether you choose to marry a white chick,
Yes.
in the eyes of the law, it's just two parties that want to get into a form of marriage.
Consenting.
And you will decide how you regulate the consequences of your marriage. That will then inform the type of marriage contract that you conclude before you go to Mfundisi. So you come to me first.
Or Home Affairs, yeah.
Or Home Affairs.
Yes.
Any marriage office.
Yes.
You come to me,
Yes.
the two of you. I explain different options, having listened to what your concerns are.
Yes.
When we agree, we then conclude that contract.
Yes.
You sign it in the presence of each other,
All right.
in the presence of two witnesses,
Yes.
and in my presence, I must satisfy myself that you are who you say you are.
That's
So
it.
I look at your ID, I look at her ID.
Yes.
If I'm satisfied, then I'll conclude it and I'll put a seal on it.
Yes.
Then I give you a certificate
Yes.
that you then take to Mfundisi or to Home Affairs,
Which gets attached.
which then gets attached to the marriage certificate that he will give you.
Yes.
But because it is a contract that must be registered, it means after you have signed, I must then take it to the deeds office. You know, the deeds office is where you register bonds for your house,
for your house.
so that the whole world knows what your marital status is.
Yeah.
So that process takes anything between 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
Yes, yeah.
But you would have been able to conclude a marriage in front of Mfundisi, relying on the certificate that a notary would have given you.
Yes.
But you must do that within 30 days of your signing in front of me.
That's it.
So leave it closer to the time of the date that you would have been given by Mfundisi or by Home Affairs.
By Home Affairs.
Sometimes it can even be classy, man. Do it on the spot.
Yes.
So
Oh, yeah.
you put 2 tables, you sign with me first,
Then we move on.
and then I hand you over to Mfundisi. It's anti.
And then
It
we-
is before.
I do. After we've signed with
You go, I do before
Before
you
you
sign.
do-
You sign with me
me
first,
and then we go, I do.
and then you go, I do there.
Okay.
You don't do, I do, then you
We
come to
you.
me.
That's
It will no longer be an
Anti.
anti. It will no longer be anti. It will be post.
anti means in pre.
Pre.
In Latin.
Yes, in Latin. So if you do, I do, and then you conclude a contract, you are now concluding a different contract. It will be a post-nuptial contract. Post meaning after.
Yeah.
And then you are already in trouble because you now have to get out of that arrangement.
Yeah. And I know that's another very intense process, because there are a lot of other rumors where people would say, post marriage, how do we now, if we've got married in community of property,
Okay.
and now we got married and we've decided now we actually want to have an anti-nuptial
Okay.
contract, but there's post marriage. So there are people who say, no, you need to get divorced first and then get remarried. And
Okay.
but I do know there is a nice legal procedure that you explained.
I will give you 2 scenarios.
Yes.
It's not all hope lost.
Yes.
If you got married in community of property and a few years down the line you realize this is not the marital regime that I want.
Yeah.
It is still possible to opt out, but because when you get married, your status changes.
Yes.
Only a court of law can reverse that process. So you would have to then bring a formal high court application to the court to ask the court's permission for you to register your contract now after the fact.
Yes. Yes.
But in order to do so, remember you are now part of a joint estate.
Yes.
You may have had debts. One of the requirements that should precede that application is that we must publish your intention to convert, so that you give notice to the creditors out there.
By publishing, you mean
In the
an
the
example?
Gazette
I
and
need
in
to
the
gazette
newspaper.
it in a newspaper.
Yes.
My
So
name.
that Standard Bank, Mashonisa, Wahau,
Yo.
and everyone else know that, because remember, if you think of it logically,
Yeah.
they could go against 2 people whose estate was bound into one.
Into one, yeah.
And now if you want to disentangle,
They're like, no, we're gonna lose money here.
exactly. So you have to publish, allow them an opportunity to object if there are those that want to object.
Yes.
And if no one objects, then halfway done, the courts are likely to then give you permission to then register a marital contract after the fact.
After the fact, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
which will then put in a position you would have been had you concluded it
Yes.
before.
Okay.
So it's not all hope lost.
All right.
The other alternative, which is not what I would necessarily advise people, because I'm an officer of the court.
Of the court, yes.
But some people divorce, so they terminate that contract,
Sure.
split the assets or do whatever else that they have to do, and then remarry.
Yo.
The only difference that this time, before they remarry, they then come to a notary like myself. Then we do a contract that is in line with whatever their needs are.
Yes.
Still an option, because remember, the law doesn't preclude you from remarrying the same person.
Same person, yeah.
You can marry her and divorce her 3 times. You know,
yeah.
you can remarry again.
Yes.
The law also doesn't say there must be a cooling period.
Okay.
You must wait. I mean, you can divorce today, 3 weeks later you have a change of heart. You can go marry that same person again.
Just for that
Just
one
for
day.
that, yeah,
But
I
you know
wanted to sort out. But you know what?
Yeah.
So you can still do that.
All right. So one last thing I wanted to ask: polygamy. Let's say.
Yes, sir. You want to get
No,
a second?
I'm looking at my options. I want to have my options.
Okay, all
I
right.
need to know what options I have. And by the way, I haven't mentioned this to my wife, so I'm seeking legal advice before I mention this to my wife. Or maybe she might be considering bringing in another person into our marriage. Is it possible
Okay.
to now be in a polygamous marriage with an antenuptial contract?
No, that will then have to be in community.
Okay.
But let's talk about this polygamy story, because I know it's a nice topic for Majita, you know. Many men won't confess publicly, but given a chance,
They'll
men
definitely go for
would
it,
like
yeah.
to do that. In terms of customary law, you are permitted to take more than one.
Yes.
But there's ways in which you do it. You know, you've got to consult the first one.
Yes.
You know, so the same process will follow. You can get up to 3. You know, as long as you do it right, and you consult, and you follow the prescripts, it is possible.
All right.
So that's polygamy.
Polygamy.
In terms of your civil marriages, you know, that is not recognized. So your traditional pre-customary marriages type of marriage. Yes. But if you practice polygamy, the Muslims can take up to 4. Our people can take up to. Given a chance, I'll do it.
Yeah.
You know, but you'll have to go to number one. Number one must consent, and then, you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Actually, I prefer polygamists, because in that way straight. Man.
Yeah, they know what they
Others appear clean.
Yeah. Yes.
They are monogamists, but hey, marital aside, there's
issues.
There's problems.
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned a very interesting one. What if your wife wants to bring another partner?
That's it.
Okay, that arrangement is called polyandry.
Oh, polyandry, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I got into trouble in one radio station where I was giving this kind of talk, and I said, it's only a matter of time before this gets constitutionally tested.
Yes.
Because you are discriminating. If men can do it, why
can't women do
why can't women? And then 90% of the male callers, they wanted to chop my head off. They were calling me names. But I cannot imagine what the legal impediment would be.
Yes.
And I bet you I would want to participate in a case like that.
That will test it.
Where I would act for a woman who wants to marry a second husband and bring them into the relationship. I would imagine the same rules will apply. You'll have to consult with number one husband. I cannot imagine legally why you can't do it.
Yeah.
There are people who are going to apply different moral standards and patriarchy and all of those things. Quite frankly, I don't think it will fly. I cannot imagine how our courts would say no to that arrangement. But like I'm saying, it's only a matter of time before it got tested. Remember, there was a time when same-sex marriages were taboo. You couldn't even think of it.
Yes.
And they got tested in the courts, and it's now law.
Yes.
And I agree with that position. There's nothing wrong.
Yes.
It's my choice of a partner.
Exactly.
The Constitution protects my sexual orientation, and why not?
Yeah.
And if a man can be allowed to marry 2, 3, 4 wives,
why can't a woman do
why
the
can't
same?
a woman do it? Whether or not I will agree to that, it's another story.
Yeah.
It's a matter of personal choice, but
That's it.
purely from a legal point of view, I cannot imagine why there would be a problem there.
Exactly.
But I know it's controversial, but hey, law is exactly that.
Exactly.
You look at the facts, you reason dispassionately, we're not swayed by public opinion.
That's it.
You deal with the law and argue legal principles.
That's it.
And I am certain that one day, in this country, the other countries where it is practiced,
Yes.
you know, and I'm sure one day in this country we'll look back and say, actually, There was a time when we never dreamt in a million years that we'll have polyandry.
Yes.
And here it is now institutionalized and codified in the law. Only if our viewers out there could be careful, think very carefully about relationships.
Yes.
And the contractual ramifications that come with the relationships before they actually jump in. Because most of the time, people seek help after the horses have bolted, when they've already done a lot of things. Thankfully you managed to consult before.
Thank you.
But you had already considered and accumulated quite significant assets, and I remember your wife too is an entrepreneur in her own right.
Yes.
And she needed to protect herself as well.
Yes, absolutely.
But most importantly, I was pleased that at your young age you had the presence of mind to have that difficult conversation, because if you can have that difficult conversation, half the battle is won.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks, Sbu.
Thank you so much, Zola. Appreciate it. Thank you. No, this was very informative. And
no second wife yet.
Not yet.
You must at least push 10 years.
10 years for sure. Cheers. Thank you, Zola. Shap, shap.